Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take that big pile of sources you send us, articles, research papers, maybe even forum threads, and really dig in to find those crucial nuggets of knowledge.
Yeah, the goal is to get you properly informed, maybe even surprise you a bit.
Definitely. And today, we're diving into something that's been making a lot of noise, the fasting mimicking diet, the FMD.
That's right.
You shared a really interesting stack of stuff on this, and our mission today is to unpack it. What is it? How does it actually work inside your body? And, what could it mean for health, for longevity?
Yeah, let's do it. We've got a great mix here. A lot on Dr. Valter Longo's work, obviously, but also looking at how it affects things like diabetes, aging, even potentially cancer.
Okay.
So we'll pull together the latest research, clinical trials too, so you can really get a handle on not just the what, but the why, why it matters and where the science is right now.
Perfect. So let's kick things off with the absolute basics then. What is this fasting mimicking diet exactly? It sounds, I guess, like a way to get fasting benefits without actually, fasting.
That's pretty much the core idea, yeah. The FMD, which was developed by Dr. Valter Longo, he's a biogerontologist.
Right.
It's specifically designed to, fool your body, make it think it's doing a water-only fast, but you still get to eat some calories, very specific ones.
Okay, so you're eating, but your body thinks you're not.
Kind of, yeah. The sources describe it as a plant-based plan, and you typically follow it for 5 days in a row.
5 days. And what does that look like food-wise, nutrient-wise? I remember seeing the details about macronutrients were really specific.
They are, and that precision is absolutely key. It's plant-based, low protein, moderate fat and carbs. It's like precision nutrition, really. So Day 1 usually allows around maybe 1,100 calories. That kind of preps the body.
Okay.
Then for days 2 through 5, the calories drop quite a bit, down to about 725 a day.
Right.
And the protein gets even lower. Slight shifts in the fat and carb percentages, too. The foods themselves are things like, healthy fats, olive oil, avocados, nuts, seeds.
The good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Plus plant proteins like legumes, lentils, and lots of different fruits and veggies. And drinking enough water is crucial too, at least 70 ounces a day.
Got it. Now, something that came up, especially in those forum chats we looked at, was people trying to, DIY this at home, make their own FMD.
Ah, yes. That's a really important point, and it brings up a serious caution from Dr. Longo himself.
Oh, really? What do you say?
He's incredibly direct. He literally says, don't try to make your own fasting mimicking diet.
Oh, okay. Pretty clear then.
Very. He compares it to trying to make your own medicine, says the amounts, the percentages, they have to be exact to work right.
Right.
He even mentioned that homemade versions in Italy apparently led to a, quote, disaster. Hospitals, doctors, even lawyers got involved.
Wow.
So the risk is either it doesn't work, you get zero benefits, or it could actually cause problems, be damaging.
So that commercial version, Prolon, it's formulated that precisely for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Carefully tested, precisely formulated, trying to wing it sounds. Less like wellness and maybe more like a trip to the ER if you're not careful.
Yeah, that makes sense. That warning really hammers home that it's not just about cutting calories, it's about sending a very specific signal to the body.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the really cool part.
Yeah, like you.
The science bit. How does this mimicking actually work at the cellular level? The sources talked about some pretty amazing processes.
Yeah, this is where it gets fascinating. It taps into the body's own sort of intelligence for repair and regeneration.
Okay.
The FMD basically flips a switch. It puts cells under a mild controlled stress, and that activates a couple of key housekeeping processes.
Housekeeping.
Yeah, first there's autophagy. Think of it like your cells doing a major spring clean, breaking down and recycling old damaged bits, literally self-eating the junk.
Okay, cleaning house. Makes sense.
And the second one is apoptosis. That's programmed cell death. Basically, the body gently telling cells that are too old or broken beyond repair to retire, make way for new ones.
So clearing out the old and broken stuff first,
Mm-hmm.
Then what? Does the body just stay empty?
No, not at all. That's just phase 1. The real magic, the rejuvenation, happens next. Our sources show that when you start refeeding, after those 5 days are up,
Right.
dormant stem cells get activated. They get switched on. And these stem cells then go and replace the cells that were cleared out, the dead or dysfunctional ones, with brand new healthy cells.
Wow. And is that targeted like just in one organ?
That's the amazing part. No, it seems to happen systemically, all through the body. Any system with diseased, old, or worn-out cells can potentially benefit from this replacement and renewal.
That really does sound like hitting a reset button for your whole system.
Yeah.
Now, is this cellular magic different from what happens with, say, a shorter fast, like just doing a water fast for a day or two? Because lots of people do that.
That's a really good question. And yeah, Dr. Longo makes a crucial distinction here. He's very clear about it.
Okay.
He says that to get the full benefits, that deep body-wide regeneration and rejuvenation, your body needs to enter a state that only happens after several days of fasting.
So a day or two isn't long enough.
According to him, no. He explicitly states, and this is pretty direct, that fasting for just a day or two carries with it no material benefits of the kind experienced after a 5-day fast.
Huh. So it's not just less benefit, it's like a different kind of benefit altogether.
Exactly. He's saying those really critical system-wide regeneration processes just don't seem to kick in until you hit that multi-day mark with this specific approach. It suggests that for FMD, it's not just about duration, it's about hitting a specific biological threshold.
Got it. Okay. Something else that always comes up with fasting is ketosis. Where does that fit in with the FMD? Is getting into ketosis the main goal here?
That's another good point. So the sources clarify that yes, ketosis does happen during FMD. It's a result of the body shifting into that fasting mimicking state.
Right.
But interestingly, it's not presented as the key driver for the longevity benefits. Dr. Longo actually notes there isn't data saying ketosis itself is necessary for longevity. It's more like a marker.
A sign that you're in the right state.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
A sign that you've successfully fooled the body. The main focus seems to be on cutting the protein and the high glycemic carbs to trigger the autophagy and apoptosis we talked about.
Makes sense.
Oh, and here's a little surprising tidbit from one of the forums.
Yeah.
Someone mentioned that drinking black coffee during a fast might actually increase apoptosis.
Interesting. Okay, so we know what it is, how it works. What about the real-world results? What does this mean for people's health? The sources showed some pretty impressive stuff, especially for type 2 diabetes in some recent research.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a very recent randomized controlled trial just this year, 2024, from Leiden University. They actually integrated FMD into primary care settings.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the results for people with type 2 diabetes were significant, really significant. The group doing the FMD cycles ended up using way less glucose-lowering medication.
Seriously. Less medication.
Yeah, and they had lower HbA1c levels too.
Yeah.
You know, that key marker for long-term blood sugar control. It showed real, sustained improvement.
What were the numbers like?
Get this. 53%, over half of the FMD participants, showed improved glycemic management, compared to only 8% in the control group.
53 versus 8%. That is a huge difference.
It really is. And it wasn't just blood sugar either.
I know. What else?
The study also found significant drops in body weight, BMI, waist size, body fat percentage, and crucially, without losing lean muscle mass, their fat-free mass stayed intact.
That's important.
Very. And maybe even more compelling, they did a follow-up analysis suggesting that the FMD had a direct positive effect on blood sugar independent of the weight loss.
Meaning it wasn't just because they lost weight.
Exactly. It points towards deeper, more fundamental metabolic changes happening beyond just shedding pounds.
Okay, so a real metabolic reset. Now, what about aging? That was another big area mentioned, something about biological age.
Yeah, this is maybe one of the most exciting findings. A study from USC, also from 2024, found that doing cycles of the FMD actually reduced participants' biological age.
Biological age, so like how old your cells act.
Precisely. Not just your birthday age, but how well your cells and tissues are actually functioning. On average, they found it reduced biological age by 2.5 years.
2.5 years younger, biologically speaking.
Yeah, it's like turning back the clock on a cellular level. The study linked this to improvements in immune system function, less liver fat, better insulin sensitivity, all things that contribute to being biologically younger.
Wow.
And they connected it back to that stem cell regeneration we discussed, plus lowering risk factors for major diseases like cancer, diabetes, heart disease.
Incredible. And speaking of cancer, the sources mentioned that too, right? Some potential benefits there.
Yes, there's growing evidence, both from lab studies and some early clinical work, suggesting FMD has anti-cancer properties.
How does that work?
It seems to do a couple of things. It helps protect healthy cells, but it makes cancer cells more vulnerable, more sensitive.
Sensitive to what?
To treatments like chemotherapy or immunotherapy. The idea is that FMD can actually potentiate these standard therapies, make them work better.
So it could help the treatments be more effective.
That's the potential, yeah. It seems to do this by cutting off some growth factors cancer cells need, while also activating helpful immune cells. Research is definitely expanding to see how it might be used alongside conventional treatments for specific cancers.
That is truly remarkable. It really sounds like this FMD goes way beyond just weight loss, although that can be a side effect.
Absolutely. Weight loss, particularly reducing body fat and belly fat, can definitely happen. But the core benefits that keep coming up in the sources are really about that deeper stuff. Cellular cleanup and renewal, metabolic health improvements, and cutting down the risks for so many age-related diseases. It's a much broader approach to, health span, living healthier for longer.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly promising, almost too good to be true in some ways. But what's the catch? What are the important things listeners need to keep in mind? I definitely saw warnings about needing medical supervision.
Yeah, and that's probably the most critical point. You absolutely hit it. The sources are unanimous and very strong on this. FMD should only be done with medical supervision.
Only with a doctor involved.
Yes, especially if you have any pre-existing conditions, things like diabetes, particularly if you're on meds that affect blood sugar.
Right, that makes sense.
Or if you have a very low BMI to begin with, or maybe a history of heart issues recently, or certain food allergies. You need a professional. Okay.
And are there side effects even for healthy people?
There can be, yeah. The studies show it's generally safe for healthy folks, but mild to moderate side effects aren't uncommon. Things like feeling tired, maybe some weakness, headaches, a bit of nausea.
Okay.
But the good news is these usually go away between the 5-day cycles.
Right. And what about that DIY thing again? We saw people talking about using specific foods, like guacamole or macadamia nuts, to try and match the macros. Is that feasible, or does it run into the same problems Dr. Longo warned about?
It really runs into the same core issue we discussed earlier. While, people have tried to piece together their own FMD meals,
Yeah.
Dr. Longo's strong advice, based on the science, is against it, because hitting those exact macronutrient ratios is so crucial for the signaling effect.
It's not just about healthy foods, it's the precise combination.
Exactly. The commercial product, Prolon, is formulated and tested to deliver that specific metabolic signal. If you deviate, you might just not get the benefits, or worse, run into those problems he mentioned. It's just not worth the risk when precision is paramount.
Okay, point taken. Don't try this at home without the kit or a doctor. Now, there was one last really intriguing point from the sources that got my eye. It was about protein intake and how the advice seems to flip depending on age.
Ah, yes, the protein paradox. That is fascinating stuff, and it really highlights how complex nutrition is across a lifespan.
What did the sources say exactly?
Okay, so for people aged roughly 50 to 65, studies found that a high protein intake, defined as like 20% or more of daily calories, was actually linked to a significantly higher risk of dying from any cause, and specifically from cancer.
Higher risk with more protein in that age group. Wow.
Yeah. But then, for people over 65, the data completely flipped.
Flip cow.
For the over 65 group, that same high protein intake was linked to a lower risk of all-cause mortality and cancer mortality.
Wait, so high protein is bad for you between 50 and 65, but then it becomes good for you after 65.
It certainly looks that way based on this research. It suggests our body's needs, especially for protein, really do change quite dramatically as we age.
So what's the thinking behind that?
Well, for younger and middle-aged adults, maybe lower protein, especially plant-based, helps keep those pro-aging pathways, like the ones involving IGF-1, a bit quieter. But for older adults, getting enough protein might become more critical to fight off frailty, to preserve muscle mass, which we naturally lose, and maybe to keep IGF-1 levels from dropping too low, because it does play roles in tissue maintenance too, and it naturally declines with age.
Huh. So it really drives home that there's no single perfect diet for everyone forever.
Exactly. It underscores that individual needs, and especially your stage of life, are absolutely key factors in figuring out what's optimal.
Wow, okay. This deep dive into the fasting mimicking diet has been genuinely enlightening. We've learned it's this really carefully put together plant-based plan.
Right, designed to trigger your body's own amazing repair systems.
Yeah, that's cellular regeneration and cleanup, leading to benefits way beyond just losing weight, like the better blood sugar control, actually getting biologically younger.
And even potentially helping out with cancer treatments. It's pretty remarkable.
It really is. The FMD seems to offer this powerful science-backed way to get some of those deep fasting benefits, but maybe in a more manageable way than just drinking water for 5 days.
Definitely. And it just highlights so clearly how what we eat, and maybe when we eat, or how we structure our eating, can profoundly shape our health, right down to the cellular level, our longevity, our resilience against disease.
So for you listening, I think the big takeaway here is the really exciting potential of these kinds of periodic, structured ways of eating, using diet as a tool to support long-term health in ways we're really just starting to fully appreciate.
For sure. And while, as we stressed, getting professional guidance is absolutely crucial if you're considering this,
Right.
the science itself is painting a really compelling picture about how we might be able to actively enhance not just lifespan, but health span.
Absolutely. Quality of life, not just quantity.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe something provocative to consider.
Okay, let's hear it.
If our bodies have these built-in repair and rejuvenation programs that get activated by specific periodic dietary signals like FMD, what other ancient practices or maybe counterintuitive approaches might hold similar keys to optimizing our health and well-being today?
That is a great question to mull over. What else is hiding in plain sight? Okay, lots to think about. Until next time, stay curious, keep digging into those sources, and keep seeking out those aha moments.